Hi folks, Krzysztof the Polish Geek and welcome to the review of this new Apple TV series, Widow's Bay. And this is a show that me, like most people, completely hasn't heard of and wasn't aware that something like this is going or anything until I've accidentally on YouTube saw several reviews of it, that this apparently this best show that you're not watching and all, and then I saw several YouTubers and other people apparently reviewing this show and giving it a pretty positive reviews, and I very much trust all those people.
Widow's Bay. Widow's Bay is an interesting concept, and it's very weird, and there's a unique aspect to this which I'm like very shocked because of who's behind it, how good it is.
I give Widow's Bay 4 out of 5 couches. This is as satisfying as both a binge and a weekly watch, so definitely put this one on your watch list.
So last night I put on the first episode. 6 hours later, I was about 8 episodes deep and then finished it this morning. What an amazing show.
It was a fascinating show that I don't think is getting enough attention for.
It was just an excellent series being put out week after week without Apple proclaiming that it was the best show of 2026.
Widow's Bay on Apple TV is delightful.
There is something.
So after that, I decided that sounds like very much a must-watch for me, and because I have Apple TV, then it wasn't hard. So yes, because of that, yesterday, a day before and yesterday, I decided to binge Widow's Bay from the beginning to the end, because all the 10 episodes are out now on Apple's TV, so thankfully it was pretty easy for me to just binge watch it from beginning to end, and yes, that's why I watched the first 6 episodes 2 days ago, and then yesterday I watched the remaining 4, and I have to say, this is a really amazing show that I think that more people should watch, and it pretty much reaffirms something that I keep saying anytime I hear people saying, oh, they don't make movies and TV shows like this anymore, that it's actually not true. Western entertainment still does some quality good entertainment like movies and TV shows. It's just that, once again, and I've said it many times and we'll have to say it again, they're just not promoted, really. It's just that instead they are too busy promoting reboots, spin-offs, pointless remakes nobody asked for, while good quality stuff that people actually would be interested is completely shuffled down and not even noticed. But if more people actually started digging, then this is the type of stuff we could be watching instead. And thankfully, it has been renewed for season 2, so thankfully we are very much going to get more of this story, although if there is something that people have to be aware of, and this is something that I think most of us fall into the trap of, including me, is that never get too excited after the first season, because unfortunately one of the most common things is that when the first season is really excellent and quality, then it generally tends to nosedive up on season 2, unfortunately. So unfortunately season 2 might be the ultimate test of this show. But whatever, season 1 was really great, and I'm gonna tell you what it's about and why it's so good and all. Widow's Bay is a Lovecraftian horror with comedy elements. It's kind of promoted as horror comedy, but thankfully it very much leans far more into Lovecraftian horror as opposed to comedy. There are comedic elements with how the townspeople are acting and all, and that's where the comedy part comes in, but thankfully it actually feels pretty natural and organic to the rest of the story, because when the story and all of that is meant to be scary, then it very much is scary and goes full Lovecraftian horror. But thankfully it strikes a perfect balance between when it's meant to be funny and when it's actually meant to be serious and scary. But more specifically, the story takes place on a New England island, which also feels kind of personal to me, because I've been saying it quite a lot on this channel. I lived in the United States for 8 years, and actually 3 years Rhode Island and 5 in Vermont, so yeah, I lived in New England all my time. I live in the United States, and I have several close friends also who live in Cape Cod. Actually love Cape Cod, even though the main protagonist of the show constantly keeps ranting how much he hates it, mostly because he's jealous of how touristy it is in contrast to his Widow's Bay island. But whatever. Again, I lived in the United States for 8 years and it was in New England, so the fact that it took place on a New England island felt very personal to me, but it also makes sense. Again, as I said, it's a Lovecraftian horror, and H.P. Lovecraft was born in New England and his stories very much took place in New England, so it makes perfect sense that Widow's Bay would take place on a New England island. But again, whatever, the story takes place on a New England isolated island called Widow's Bay, and the main character is the mayor of Widow's Bay, Tom Loftus, played very well by this actor Matthew Rhys. And Tom Loftus, as the mayor of Widow's Bay, he very much wants the island to prosper, and he very much tries to develop the touristy business on the island. But what's also interesting is that Tom is a skeptic who completely rejects anything supernatural, despite the fact that the locals very much believe that the island is cursed, because Tom is actually an outsider who didn't originate from Widow's Bay, and again, he completely rejects that the island is cursed and all the supernatural. But actually, that's where the interesting comedy comes in. He interacts with the locals and all, and they all very much believe in all the supernatural, but they all treat it as sort of basically an annoyance, as basically annoyance that's part of everyday life, despite what those supernatural things can actually do. And what's also interesting is that as the story further progresses, we learn that these are not just legends or folktales, but it's all very real. And this is where I think that the show strikes a perfect balance of when to actually be scary and when to be funny. Because Tom's interactions with the locals and all, this is all really hilarious and also feels very natural and in line with the show. But then when the supernatural elements actually start happening, then the show does a really good job at actually crafting a pretty scary and unsettling atmosphere and constantly keeping your attention, and it keeps you at the edge of your seat. And the atmosphere of the show is simply top-notch and perfectly fitting with the Lovecraftian story and setting that the show is telling. Like, atmosphere is incredible, and also I really love the character interactions, because Tom Loftus is also a widower and a single father, and he's raising a son. And while, as I said, the show is very much a Lovecraftian horror with all those supernatural things happening on the island, but Tom's interactions with his son feel so natural and very much a realistic reaction that you very much expect to be happening between a father and a son. And I think that their father-son dynamic is really well written, as in general are most of the characters in the story, because that's what also makes it so interesting. As I already said, the characters living on the island will believe in the supernatural things, which turned out to be true later again, but at the same time, the characters in general feel so realistic and so natural, kind of like they basically get used to the life on the supernatural island, and that's why they basically treat all those things as part of everyday life. But in general, I think that the cast in general is incredible and the characters are really well written, as is the dialogue. And the final episode, spoiler alert, ends on a cliffhanger. I won't say what it is, but it ends on a cliffhanger, and thankfully the show has already been renewed for a second season, so it's only a matter of time when this cliffhanger will get resolved. But yes, it ends on a cliffhanger, but I won't spoil what it is. The only thing is, I want more Widow's Bay already, which once again is a sign of a really good show and really good writing, when the last episode ending on a cliffhanger really leaves you desiring more. Like, again, Widow's Bay and A Night of the Seven Kingdoms in the beginning of this year are easily two best live action shows of this year. Like, in fact, I might go as far as to say, based on these two alone, 2026 might actually be the best year for TV shows. And what's best, also my favorite anime, JoJo's Adventure, Steel Ball Run, is coming in September, but again, that's anime. We're going on a tangent. Let's say when it comes to live action shows, 2026 is really doing a spectacular job. Again, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms in the beginning of the year, and now Widow's Bay. If only more people were actually paying attention to Widow's Bay, although we have to again mention this. Maybe we shouldn't be getting too ahead of ourselves, because if there is an important lesson to be learned these days, that oftentimes many modern shows, and that's probably what hurts the most when it happens. First season is really excellent, and then it just goes downhill from there. And let's hope that's not going to be the case with Widow's Bay or A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, for that matter, because both are really amazing, well-written shows with very great characters, and I'm just looking forward to season 2 of both. But whatever, as things currently stand, season 1 of Widow's Bay is really amazing, really keeps you on the edge of your seat, and the atmosphere is so spectacular, and really, for now, it's an ultimate show for fans of H.P. Lovecraft. And if you love H.P. Lovecraft or love good quality stories in general, then what are you waiting for? If you have Apple TV, then go ahead and binge Widow's Bay. You just have to. Again, as many YouTubers rightfully call it, it's a really amazing show that nobody is watching, but everyone should be watching. But again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking out the review of Widow's Bay. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you then, bye!